tell you a little story. So I like to put it into the classroom context. This is a story about a group of year 2 children in a primary school. And one of the children announced one day that they would be leaving at the end of term. And the first question was, where are you going? And the answer was, we're going to emigrate to Greece. And the first comment triggered the teacher's action, because somebody in the group went, don't like Greece. Now, nobody knows to this day whether they were thinking of Grease the movie, or Grease the stuff you slip on in the kitchen, or the plates. But it didn't matter. So the teacher said, how many other people know anything about Greece? No. Nobody really. If one child, maybe the peer group leader, thought, Greece, then nobody else was that bothered. One person said they'd been there on their holidays, but everybody else sort of didn't really want to say very much. So she said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's do a PMI on moving to Greece, and we'll think about each of those strands in turn. And they did all the plus points, all the minus points, and all the interest points in little groups. And these little cards, these yellow cards here, are where each of the groups have reported back. And the teacher then put them on display. And there's a little note underneath at the bottom, footnote, to say what happened. And you know, in the classroom, when the child went to leave at the end of term, nearly all the children in the class, because of this exercise perhaps, wanted to make sure they got their address and their number, because they were going to keep in touch. And they wanted to have photos of where they were going. And they also wanted to know, well, maybe if we go to Greece on holiday, we'll come and visit you. What a difference that maybe just a little bit of thought, a little bit of positive thought just made. And that we got the children to think of all the plus points, minus points, and interest points. We didn't say no one's allowed to say bad things. We said plus, minus, and interesting. And we helped the children to see things differently. Let me give you another little example here. I like to always put this, as I say, straight back into the classroom context. So this is a teacher, some year 1 children, and they're doing, as you can see, if you look behind her and to the right, you'll see they're doing long ago. I don't know how long ago, but I know that on this particular lesson, they were looking at Victorian England. You know, I remember the lesson very clearly because the lady told the story of her great-grandfather, who was a lamplighter, would go along every evening with a long thing and light the lamps. A spill, I think it's called, isn't it? A spill. And light the lamps, the gas lamps or the lamps along the street. And she told this story, and then they did a PMI on life without television, because in those days there wasn't electricity and there was no television. And the children decided at the end of it that life without television had a lot of plus, minus, and interesting points about it. There were good things about having no television, and there were some minus things, but there were also interesting things, variations. And so that's a typical example of how it's plugged as a tool straight into context of the curriculum. So the teacher used the PMI tool, the children had done it before anyway, they knew the name of the tool, they plugged it in, and she guided them through the process. So it's about using the tool in the curriculum as a delivery method of getting the children to think. In a sense, the principle behind it is what I suppose one could call direct attention thinking. Direct attention thinking means looking and noting what we see. So I always tell the story, which comes from one of Dr. Edward de Bono's books, about a very rich merchant who sent an explorer to discover a new island, or some new islands, a group of islands. And when the explorer came back, the merchant said, well, what have you found? He said, well, nice island, covered in trees, very nice. He said, anybody there? No, I don't think so, didn't see anybody. He said, is that it? He said, yeah, I came away, there was nobody there, lots of trees, nothing. He said, well, I want you to go back. I want you to go back, and I want you to take a compass with you. And I want you to stand in the middle of the island, and I want you to look north. And from the middle of the island, I want you to write down everything that you can see. Hills, valleys, rivers, trees, animals. And then I want you to turn and point south. And I want you to do the same again. And if you see any lakes, any rivers, any trees, what you see, how many there are, and note it down. And then I want you to look east, and then I want you to look west. In other words, He, the rich merchant, gave the explorer a checklist, a directing attention. So instead of just walking on the island and saying, yeah, island, trees, nobody about, go home, you go back and say, well, I went to the island, I saw this, there was a river, there are some lakes, there were some very large fish in the lake. I also saw a mountain, and there was cloud around the mountain. I could see nobody around, but there was sign of habitation, that fisher people had been on the beach. And there was the remains of an old broken boat. That's far richer than the first one, and the reason it is not because of the merchant's cleverness, but the merchant's ability to direct the attention of the person exploring for them. So what we do with direct attention is get the thinker to look in their mind's eye at all the different things. So we're going to have a look at something else. Now here's a great example of when I said about children's intellect and their memory and their experiences. When I go to large inner city schools and I ask what a chicken looks like, a lot of people, especially the youngsters, tell me it's pink and it comes in a plastic wrapper. And they're right, it does. A chicken in a supermarket comes in a plastic wrapper. And yet, when I go to a rural community and I ask what a chicken looks like, they say, well, it depends what breed of chicken. That's the first question. Or they say, well, they've got feathers on and they cluck and they walk around the farmyard. I've got 3. My brother keeps them. Completely different perception. Neither of them are right or wrong, but their experience has been guided, and therefore when the question comes up, their perception is fixed by that experience. Now, let's have a look at chicken, because if we now wanted to examine what we know about chicken, one way we can do that is to use what I call OPV, other people's views, not necessarily ourselves. Now, just out of interest, let's just do a little straw poll. If I ask you this question, which is, could you sit down now and with a pencil write on a piece of ordinary A4 paper, could you please tell me by raising your hand if you feel confident that you could write a whole side of writing, not drawing pictures, writing, on the subject of chickens? Could you think you could write a whole side? Interesting. Okay? No worries. You don't need to look around, there were very few hands. Right. Now, I agree. I think that sometimes it's very difficult. Let me show why and how this tool can help. Other people's views takes us away from our own perception of chickens. So bear in mind, you voted just now by not moving your hands. Let's see what happens when we, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, use other people's views and look at chickens. So nobody, I think, has a book open on chickens. Nobody has tapped into the internet. So we're not here today with a resource box full of stuff on chickens. We've only got this stuff up here. Ready? Here we go. Let's start with this. If we were farmers keeping chickens, what would be the key points? What are the key points? Well, I'll start you off. I remember, I live in the countryside now, and the farmer down the road hates foxes because foxes kill chickens. So it's get the chickens safe. Put them in a place where they can't be eaten by the fox. Okay, that's one. Anyone else want to give us some help? If you were a farmer, what would happen when thinking about chickens?
Battery or free range.
Oh yeah, is it battery? Is it free range? Is it barn eggs? Is it whatever it is? How do I keep them? Thank you.
You want them to be good layers.
Want them to be good layers, thank you. You want them to be productive, laying eggs. If they're going to be eaten as meat, you want them to put on weight. You want them to put on healthy weight and not have fragile bones and all these things. Okay, anything else, please, as a farmer?
Worry about bird flu.
Worry about bird flu and infection and disease control.
Do you want them to breed?
Do you want them to breed? Do you want them to breed? And what mix of breeds do you want, maybe? What kind of chickens? Okay, anything else?
What do you feed them on?
Yeah, what do you feed them on? And when you put the food in at one end, what do you do with the stuff that comes out the other end? Where do you put it? These are all things that a farmer would have to deal with. Let's move on. You are now a hungry person and you've been presented with a chicken, or you see a chicken. What are your thoughts? Yum, yum, yum. Yum, yum, yum. No hiding that. Thank you very much. Yes. I don't know whether the chicken, by the way, is alive or dead. It doesn't really matter. But the point of the exercise is a hungry person would see it maybe as an opportunity. But what happens if they're vegetarian? What happens if it is alive? You remember, think of Victorian times. Chickens were grown in your backyard. I don't know what happened at eating time, but maybe chickens had to be dispatched and made oven ready. You see how diplomatic I am, oven ready. It's a lovely phrase, isn't it? Oven ready. Okay. What else about a hungry person?
What sauce would you serve it with?
What sauce? Thank you. How would you cook it? What sauce would you serve it with? How long do you cook? Do you have to cook chicken well? People say that different meats need cooking different times. Okay, let's move on. Doctor, we are now medical practitioners. What do we know about chickens now with our doctoring hat on? Chicken pox. Chicken pox. Very simple. Very simple. Anything else? Salmonella. Always mentioned in connection with raw chicken. Back to the cooking issue. My mother told me that doctors she's 80 odd now, but she would always say, if you boil chicken, it's good for you. Boiled chicken and things when you've been ill is supposed to be good for you. Boiled chicken broth. Okay, anything else about doctoring and chickens? Are there any allergies? Chicken mites? Oh, chicken eggs. Allergic to eggs or particular parts of the egg white or the egg yolk. Okay, let's move on. Another chicken now. You didn't think this morning walking into school that you'd be by 10:05 you'd be thinking about the life as another chicken. But nevertheless, what do you know about that chicken? If you were another chicken, it's a boy. At the risk of hearing what I don't want to hear, how do you know? Okay, we've got gender in chickens, right? We've got what else? We've got pecking order. What else have we got in chickens, please?
Breed.
Breed. Beg your pardon. Breed. Different breeds of chicken. Can you hazard a guess as to if you think that may be a chicken? What breed it is? Well, it would depend on the colour. Maybe we need to know the colour. Anything else? Another chicken. Age? How long do you live for? I mean, is it 80 years and 10? No, don't think you did. Have you ever seen an old chicken? I don't know, but it's interesting that we need to know. Right, let's move on. Vegetarians. Bottom right-hand corner here, vegetarians. What would they say if they saw a chicken, please? How sweet? Leave it? Pet? Anything else? Can they eat the eggs? Some can? Okay. What about a chef? Let's imagine Jane. When I work with the children, I always say Jamie Oliver because everybody seems to know. Jamie Oliver, what would a chef say about chicken? Sorry? Menu. Things you can do with it. Changing the way we perceive it. What's he done? Has Jamie Oliver done anything with chicken? Would a chef be insulted being given a chicken, or is chicken an easy meat to cook with, or would they? It'd have to be what, sorry? It has to be corn-fed. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Okay, so it has to be the type of chicken. It needs to be a breast chicken or a corn-fed chicken or whatever. And does an old chicken cook well? Is it like lamb and mutton, and you have to be careful of old birds? Okay, let's swiftly move on to the child now to finish off. To finish off the child, what's your perception? What do you think the children would say about chickens? Are they dangerous? Stories, chicken licking, yeah? Anything else? Chicken Run, the film, Chicken Run. And here's one that really, I'm sure we all will imagine the same thing. I did this in a school that was right close to a main line into London, and they said that's playing on the line, playing chicken on the railway line. But then that's important. We need to know that that's what's in their mind, so they know that playing chicken on the line. Okay. And of course, then you've got the bit about your remembrances now, because we've all been children. Would you raise your hand if you have good remembrances of chicken in the past as a child? If you like the idea of seeing a chicken, playing with a chicken, keeping a chicken. And conversely, thank you, raise your hand if you don't like it, if you think it's nasty. And there's always an experience. May I just ask, lady in pink there, why did you say you didn't like the thought?
A friend had chickens and the cockerel used to chase us in the
Chase-
garden.
Yes, thank you very much. Wherever I go... What were you doing to him? But the children, remember we talked about tapping into what they know and what they remember. I have a fear of chickens because when I was a little person, a chicken pecked me and very nearly got the eye, it got me on the cheek here. But the point is that those things are important to the children as well. So there will be people like children will always do, will relate to the chicken, or there are others who say, no, thank you, not for me. Anyway, to give you a feel, that's OPV, other people's views. And this would be a practice item. And we can put anything in the middle. Let me show you what I mean. If we did an OPV with, say, some slightly older children, you might want to try this one. This is quite a nice one. I call it the, for various reasons, the new European rule, that all cars, as of the end of this year, all cars are going to be painted yellow, bright yellow. To which, usually, people go, rather like they did with Greece, in a funny way, they go, ugh, or that would be pants, or that would be silly, or why? To which I reply, I don't know, but let's have a look. Do you think it would be useful? Who thinks it would be a good idea? And then some of them put their hands up and say, who thinks it would be a bad idea? Okay, thank you. And who really doesn't care? And our drivers at the now. Okay. Right, so, we're not going to do this one directly, but let me step you through it. I've not chosen these headings for a particular purpose. I've just tried to spread the thoughts around the different people's views. So I asked the group to think about what the police would say if cars were painted yellow. And then I get them to imagine, after an incident, someone said, excuse me, madam, what colour was the getaway car? It was yellow. Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, so we talk about the cars painted yellow, but there is an interesting point here, because I'm probably like you. When I did this, I didn't expect what I got. And I think one thing we must all be aware of is when we use thinking skills, you will get stuff from the children which you won't expect. So I said at this point, so the police then don't like the idea. And the group in the corner, who'd only been thinking about it for 30 seconds or a minute, said, excuse me, Mr. Newman, you haven't asked us. I said, I'm so sorry, I had assumed we were all saying that the police wouldn't think it was helpful. They said, in the corner, but the police would paint your car yellow in stages if you were a naughty driver. Wow. So what they were saying was, all cars are painted yellow if you're naughty. So instead of giving you points on your licence, and you may still get those, you get little stripes or dots or something. So when you see a car completely yellow, you say, watch out. So please remember, if I'm passing on to you some thoughts on teaching thinking, be prepared for the unexpected. Because that group were quite adamant that the rest of the room hadn't seen what they'd seen. Now that's beautiful, that's brilliant, because they'd seen something else. We were all saying, silly, isn't it, really, painted yellow? What colour was that car then? Is this your car? No, that's mine. Well, they're both yellow. It's confusing. These guys had said, no, it's about painting yellow when you're naughty, or for whatever reason. So, let's have another look. I asked them about drivers. Would drivers think painting cars yellow was good or bad? What would they think? What would the views be of drivers? So they start to think now, although they're not drivers, they think like drivers. They may be only year 3s and 4s, but they're thinking about what car drivers would think. They've been in a car perhaps, they've sat in the... So that some of them would say it would be easier to see. Some of them talk through what they think it would look like, confusing as a driver. All the cars moving around all yellow.